For centuries, Europe believed its knights were untouchable steel-clad men chosen by birth, fate, and tradition to dominate any battlefield. They were trained from childhood, armed with the finest weapons money could buy, and convinced that God himself favored their cause. No enemy, they believed, could withstand the charge of armored cavalry moving as one. In April of 1241, that belief died on a quiet stretch of land in western Poland, not slowly, not honorably, but completely. What happened there was not just a military defeat. It was a psychological collapse, an event so humiliating, so total, that it haunted Europe for generations. An army that represented the very soul of medieval Christendom was dismantled by a force many had dismissed as primitive nomads, and it happened in just 3 days. To understand how tens of thousands of European warriors were undone so quickly, we must first strip away the myths, because this story is not about bravery versus savagery. It is about arrogance, meeting preparation, tradition colliding with adaptation, and an old world learning violently that the rules had changed. The enemy Europe misunderstood. When medieval chroniclers wrote about the Mongols, they used words like demons, beasts, punishment from God. These descriptions were less about accuracy and more about terror. Europe needed monsters to explain what logic could not. The truth was far more unsettling. The Mongols were not chaotic raiders. They were not mindless hordes driven by bloodlust. They were the product of one of the most disciplined and innovative military systems the world had ever seen. Less than 2 generations earlier, Genghis Khan had transformed scattered nomadic tribes into a unified war machine. He abolished aristocratic privilege, promoted leaders based on merit, enforced strict discipline, and created a system where intelligence, logistics, and coordination mattered more than raw strength. Every Mongol warrior grew up on horseback. Riding was not a skill, it was instinct. A child learned balance before speech, endurance before comfort. They could survive on dried meat and fermented mare's milk for weeks, travel distances that would break European armies, and fight effectively in conditions that would cripple heavier forces. But their true strength was not physical, it was mental. Mongol warfare was calculated, cold, patient. Every movement served a purpose. Every retreat was deliberate. Every engagement was designed to break the enemy not just physically, but psychologically. By 1241, this system had already crushed empires. Northern China had fallen. Central Asia had been erased. The great Islamic powers had been humbled. Cities that resisted were wiped from the map not as acts of rage, but as warnings. Now, under Batchu Khan, grandson of Genghis, and his generals Khaden and Baidar, the Mongol tide reached Europe's doorstep, and Europe was not ready. Europe's confidence and its blindness. Medieval Europe fought wars the way it had for centuries. Heavy cavalry was supreme. Knights were the battlefield's centerpiece, armored elites whose charge could shatter infantry and decide battles in minutes. Warfare was personal, honor-bound, and deeply tied to social status. Courage mattered more than coordination, glory more than patience. This system worked against enemies who played by the same rules. The Mongols did not. When news arrived of entire eastern cities being erased, of armies vanishing in hours, Europe struggled to comprehend it. Many dismissed the reports as exaggeration. Others believed these horrors were distant someone else's problem. Duke Henry II of Silesia did not have that luxury. He understood that if the Mongols were not stopped in Poland, nothing would stand between them and the heart of Europe. So he did what medieval leaders always did in moments of crisis. He called for unity, and for once, Europe answered, an army built on faith and steel from across Poland, Moravia, and the German states. Warriors gathered. Polish nobles set aside rivalries. The Teutonic Knights rode south from the Baltic. Disciplined and battle-hardened, the Knights Templar veterans of the Crusades answered the call. Infantry marched alongside them, spearmen, crossbowmen, even miners armed with improvised weapons. Priests walked among the ranks, offering blessings and absolution. Banners of every color filled the horizon, symbols of faith, lineage, and pride. Some chroniclers claimed a force of 100,000 men. Modern historians place the number lower, perhaps 25,000 to 40,000. Still, it was one of the largest European armies ever assembled. Opposing them were roughly 20,000 Mongols. On paper, Europe had every advantage: numbers, armor, heavy cavalry, and divine confidence.